YouTube, and welcome back to another Thursday of Travel with me, Travel with Kirsten. In this video today, we're going to watch a documentary. It's called The Last Tourist, and it really dives into a lot of things that I learned about when I was studying at NC State, and a lot of things that I talk about, like cruises and all-inclusive resorts. So we're going to watch that together. We're going to react to it and give my opinion and see if it lines up with what I've learned and what I talked about, and if I learned anything new. And I hope that you learn new things from this video too. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get the video on. And while I'm doing that, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. Your support means everything to me. And hit the red button to subscribe so you never miss out on every Thursday when I post a video. And comment if you learned anything new after this video is done, or if you enjoyed it, and if you want me to react to more travel tourism related things. And let's get into it. John, if you're watching this, thanks for the hula. Okay, so we're only about 5 minutes in, and the first minutes of this, it's literally, you know how they say social media is like a highlight reel? It's like that, but all of the negative impacts. It shows tourists leaving trash, it shows mass tourism, overcrowding, exploitation, all of that. So already it's super emotional for me just to watch, because this is the things I talk about, and it's literally true. And you can see a bunch of it in the first 4.5 minutes of this documentary. My reaction so far. Okay, so now we're 15 minutes in. They're starting to talk about how social media has influenced traveling, especially because people will go for the picture more than they'll go for the place. And let me rewind a little bit because he just said it. Oop.
29% of millennial travelers said they wouldn't go to a destination if they couldn't post about it on Instagram.
29% of millennial travelers wouldn't go if they don't post on Instagram. And that makes me sick, I guess you can say. So within literally the next minute of watching, they then went on to point out and say, are we just traveling for the iconic picture? Because, you know, one place, somebody posts one thing there and then everybody wants to take that same picture. So they were saying, are we traveling for the iconic picture, or are we traveling for the enrichment of that place and culture? So that I absolutely stand with and agree. Pausing really quick because if you are on my Snapchat, you know that I applied for a tour guide position with G Adventures, and this is literally the founder of that company in this film. Listen, dude, we stand for the same things. Stand for the same things. We are now getting into the cruise segment. And I want to turn my camera on and just say watch it, but I want you to go and watch this whole thing for yourself. So I'm going to just kind of reiterate what they were saying and how it's not traveling. But anyways, one thing that they just pointed out that I talk about a lot when I have these cruise conversations with my friends and just people is that you get off and there's these little shops, and the cruises have made, I guess, like deals with these shops that a percentage is going back to the cruise. So, like, please believe me when I say that cruises are stealing money from places. A little thing in this film, it was from, actually, I already forget the location it just was, but it literally had locals talking, and they were like, we see these big cruise ships come in and we don't get any money from them. Literally came from a local herself. Imagine millions of people coming into your home and you get none of that money and you are still struggling to live your own life. Just think about that. And I came in to join us, and he says, travel sustainably and ethically. Right, PJ? Literally 4 seconds later, I should just keep watching and then talk when the whole segment's over, because then she went on to say that you're given, and now this is focusing maybe on like one cruise, But again, I'm reacting to this video, so I'm reacting to this film, so I'm reacting to what I'm seeing. She said how you're handed a brochure. Also, let me make it clear, I've never been on a cruise. So I don't know from my experience, but if you have yours, please share. You're given a brochure type of thing, map, that says where to go, and don't go outside of there because because it can be scary or something, or scary dealing with the locals. But they don't want any of your money going somewhere that isn't going to come back to them. Thank you. Founder of G Adventures just said,
I'm born in Trinidad. I can speak firsthand. There's a tension that's built between local people and the tourist. And that tension is being used by the tour operators to build compound walls, pushing more and more people into isolation. Because they're saying, don't leave these walls because the natives are restless. Because they are restless, because they're not benefiting from the fact that you're living in luxury, consuming mass amounts of resources. But outside of those walls, there's not access to medical care or...
The natives are restless. They're restless, and this is why they get called crazy and don't go out there and visit them. But he's saying how the natives are restless because they watch all of this come in and this luxury, and they're fighting for their life to get health insurance. That's what he also goes on to say. And I think more people need to be aware of this. A point was just made, and I think this is a huge thing. So right now they're talking about Kenya, and they said that 14% of each dollar spent is given back to Kenya, and the other percentage of that dollar is given to foreign ownership. Okay, so I just finished watching it. I decided to stop, stopping while I was watching it and record. I took notes instead. Right now, before going back to my notes and just literally fresh off of my mind after watching, the impact and the emotional impact that this film gave me, literally when people ask about, because I studied Parks, Recreation, Tourism, Sustainable Tourism, concentration at NC State, and people ask about that, and I try to explain it to them. And this film, I felt like I was sitting in my classrooms again. And I really wish I was. And I wish this film was out while I was in my classes because I know it would be a hot topic and such a discussion. It literally goes over a variety of things that my classes have touched on. And it sums it up in an hour and 41 minutes. So now I have this document that I can tell people, please go watch this because it is exactly what I learned, and even talks about it a little more and dives into everything a little more. And it's just so eye-opening, even as someone who just graduated with a degree concentrated in sustainable tourism. This puts it into perspective yet again from travelers, from different founders of companies, from different owners of their own companies and what they've created, and because when I talk about it, people think I'm so focused on this negative tourism or the negative tourist. But this also shows you the impacts of and the solutions and how tourism is growing and where it is getting to. And it makes me super hopeful and excited and happy for people that are taking the time to educate themselves and really look into the destinations that they're going to instead of just hopping on a plane and going somewhere because it costs them $400 for everything and things like that. And it's just really, really inspiring and makes me super excited and happy. I feel like everything is kind of happening so perfectly, with my timing coming into this industry and the way it's growing, and people are learning so much. It's just so emotional and just honestly emotions everywhere, as you can tell. So some notes that I took, let me try to get through these, and I'm going to try to get through them as fast as I can, but efficiently as well, because we know I can just go on and on. One note that I have is that the highest level, the destinations where they have the highest level of tourism also have the highest level of poverty. And I'm not saying this is the root cause of it, and it's because they'll never integrate anything into the tourism chain. So these communities are not getting resources and everything's going back into the tourists because it's just staying in that economy rather than integrating into these communities so that the money is fluctuating everywhere and it's not only going back to the tourists. Because remember, you're visiting someone's home. You are a guest when you're traveling, and they're not getting anything out of it, and that's not fair, and that sucks. You know, like, it's like having an Airbnb and people are staying there, but they're never paying for it. Like, think of that. Oh, and another thing too that really caught my eye. So there was a place headed towards Machu Picchu, if I'm saying that correctly. And so there's local communities that get passed while going to destinations. And a woman talked about it and how her community sort of lost sight of what their grandparents used to do for them with sewing and with dyeing different things with flowers and foods and using all of that to create things, and how they kind of got lost in that. And they pulled back into it, and a group of women worked together to build that up again and relearn what their grandmothers knew. And then they said, we should turn this into the tourism thing. So that's another thing too that I think people need to understand, is that locals understand the profit they can make off of tourists. But if it's not like, and I think what people think is that locals hate tourists, which is fair because there are some that definitely do. But I mean, you probably would too if you were in their shoes, let's be honest. But what I'm saying is that there's locals who understand that tourists bring in, and just travel itself brings in a bunch of money. And it can be done so sustainably and so ethically, where you can exchange the cultural experience and the education in return for making a profit and having a better livelihood. So it's definitely all feasible, and it's done correctly too. I mean, it just needs to be done that way, you know? So one thing that this film did touch on that I actually was aware of but wasn't educated enough myself on was these animal tourist attractions and the elephant ride and swimming with dolphins, and how inhumane and cruel it actually is to these animals. And you know, these attractions are happening because tourists want it. So, you know, like, the demand for things is gonna cause that service to be there. So as a tourist, if you want to see these animals do all these tricks and these shows, you need to be aware of how cruel it actually is and what these animals are actually going through and actually experiencing. If you watch this film, you will see that, which I encourage you to. So that's all I'm going to say about that, is that was super eye-opening. I was aware of it, but I wasn't at the same time. But of course, this film also provides a solution where you can still see these beautiful animals in their natural habitat, where they're not trained with hooks. You'll see that if you watch this video. I won't elaborate on that. They're trained with love, and they're trained with what they deserve, the life they deserve to have. Just because they're animals doesn't mean they don't experience feelings and have emotions. They can get just depressed as humans do. And that is something we may have briefly touched it in classes here and there, but never actually had the time to think about it like this film had just brought to me today. So definitely think about that. And so I kind of wrote down, I was like, is this the tourist's fault? If there's a service, tourists are going to take it, right? But I think as a tourist and as a traveler, it absolutely is your responsibility to get to know where you're going and kind of what it's doing. And education is everything. I've said this in my whole life about so many things. If people aren't educated, then how are they supposed to know? Because I was that friend who, like, if I wasn't educated or I've never heard of anything, I absolutely had no idea. I knew nothing about it. And so I think education is everything. And if you're a traveler going somewhere, absolutely do your research and your education and see what these places are really doing. And, you know, if there's companies that are saying that they, you know, are giving back to local communities and doing things like that, question them and hold them accountable, because that's how you can actually prove that it's happening, and that how you can also hold them accountable, you know? There's this one woman who spoke throughout the entire film, and I personally want to be friends with her. Anyways, though, a woman said that poverty has been here. You know, it's like, it's not just arising because of travel and because of tourism. Poverty is everywhere. The 2022 Tourism Impact Report just came out, and U.S. was, I believe, like holding the top spot for revenue and things like that. But the poverty here is absolutely insane. Go to California, go to LA, go to the streets anywhere. Here in Raleigh, you'll see it too, you know. Anyways, though, but when tourists go, they have the chance and they have the responsibility to make a choice. And it's, am I going to be a part of the solution or not? So, are you going to actually give, when you travel, make sure that your travels are giving back to these communities? Or are you going to travel somewhere where the money is going right back into America and these American-owned companies that are barely giving anything to the community because all they care about is a profit over people? And it's sickening. Okay, so another thing that I touched on too is voluntourism, which I've definitely talked about in my classes, but again, this one really kind of sparked a lot of, opened my eye for me a lot. So in this film, it specifically talked about voluntourism with orphanages and the impact it has on it through these pictures that you see and all of these reviews and all of these great, amazing things that you see online, but it doesn't ever talk about the emotional impacts that it has on these kids once you're leaving, you know. You go there and you fulfill this void for however many days you're there, but then as soon as you leave, it's kind of like a rotating door and new ones come in, and it's like an attachment issue to these children, and it can really affect them growing up. And in the film, it had a lot of statistics about suicide rates, criminal rates, ones that actually make it to going off to college and things like that. And so the impact of that too, it's just like you don't really think about it, and this is where that social media thing can come in again, and it's like people are like, oh, look at this great thing I'm doing, and it just can be so twisted. Also, another thing too is that if there is a tourist demand for orphanages, then they're going to have them, you know? So there was one woman who talked about her own experience, and she said it was great. I thought everything I was doing was amazing, but I realized these kids are there because I wanted them to be there. I wanted to come out here to an orphanage and put my however much little time in that I did just to leave and realize that it's not a solution in the long run. Because if volunteering was a solution, it's been in the works for so long, it wouldn't be a thing anymore. You know, it would have been the solution already, but it's not. And so it went on to talking about how these voluntourism things, like with this orphanage, they mirror and they mimic a zoo. You go in there and you hug these children and you take pictures with them, and then you leave and you just go right back to your life. And it really, like, the idea of it mimicking a zoo really, like, hurts. Like, you know, it's really sad that that's a thing, and it's true, sitting here thinking about it and watching it, which I hope you will do too, because it's just super impactful, like I said. The last note that I have is when travelers demand it, the industry will give it. So if travelers demand sustainable tourism and they demand companies that will give back to communities, then these services and these industries are going to give that. And I don't think people realize the power that we actually hold, that anyone holds as just a person, especially when it comes to businesses and demands of things. If people start to realize, and I'm going to use the elephant one as an example, if people start to realize how inhumane and cruel it is, and they don't want it anymore, then these people aren't making a profit. They're not going to obviously have those services anymore. If people are demanding, they want to see these elephants in their habitats that they belong in with a loving trainer and being fed right and not chained up and scratched with hooks to let people sit on them. That's what the industry is going to give. So, summing things up, and on the end of this film is super impactful, and I'm so happy that they created it and that the founder of G Adventures was in this, especially because I just recently discovered that company and applied for them, and it makes me really excited that I did apply for them. But there are so many great people out there who do care about these things. You just have to do your research, and you have to find these specific companies that will provide you with sustainable tourist attractions, I guess you can say. Like G Adventures, they have thousands of trips you can go on that are ethical and humane and sustainable and good for the economy of the local community and so many different things like that. You just have to look for it. And I think people assume that the all-inclusive resorts and all of that are such a steal, but there's so many options. There's work away from homes where you literally stay for free, and sometimes they'll feed you too while you're actually indulging in the community and in the culture. And I understand that people don't want that kind of tourism, but I'm going to be honest, you can literally go to a pool and sip frozen whatever the heck you want down here in Florida. Do it in your own home, like, if I'm being honest. I don't know. That's my opinion. I don't see the point of going to a whole nother country or culture to do something that I can literally do honestly, not in my own backyard because I don't have a pool, but if I did, I could absolutely make frozen drinks, put on whatever song I want on through my speaker, and sit there like I'm on vacation. So, that's just my opinion. But there are so many ways to travel sustainably and ethically and do it the correct way. And we as travelers need to educate ourselves more and really put ourselves out there for the right reasons and just take note of what we're doing, the footprint that we're leaving, and rethink tourism as a whole. I know that UNTWO right now is posting a bunch of things because it's National Tourism Month, actually. And if you get the chance, definitely look into it. I see it all over LinkedIn. I see it all over my Instagram. But, you know, again, it's just kind of what you cater your feed to. So if you want to join me in rethinking tourism, definitely follow UNTWO, WTTC, different tourism companies like that. Follow G Adventures, Education First. They're a good one as well. So just put yourself out there and really rethink tourism as you plan your next trip. With that being said, I hope you really enjoyed this reaction video. I know it was super emotional for me and heavily emotional, and maybe it's overwhelming. I know that my brain is scattered all over the place right now with information, but I hope that you got a lot out of this video, and I really encourage you, I'm basically begging you at this point to watch this film because it's super impactful, it's super informative, and it touches on so many different things from real life experiences to statistics to actually showing you it firsthand. So please, after liking this video, go ahead and if you have the time, watch this film. Let me know what you thought about it, share your thoughts, and with that being said, I will see you next week in another video of Travel with Kirstin. Bye!